If I gave you a problem like this, would you be able to solve it? Well, in today's video, we're going over percentage problems. Let's do it.
All right, let's begin. What value is 42% of 250? All right, so the first step to solving this problem is thinking of how we can represent this problem. So 42% of 250. This can be written as 250 times 0.42. This can be taken further. So now this can be written as 250 times 0.01 times 42, right? Because 42 times 0.01 would just be 0.42, all right? So now what we have to realize is that 42% of 250, which is the same thing as this equation right here, is really just 1% of 250 times 42. And that's pretty simple because when you have 1% of a number, right? So for this case, 250, all you have to do to find what 1% equals is divide the number by 100. So if we're trying to find 1% of 250, then we would do 250 divided by 100. That leaves us with 2.5, which means 1% equals 2.5. Now all we have to do is 42 times 1%, which in this case is 2.5. When we do 42 times 2.5, that leaves us with 105. And that's your answer. Next, 18% of 145 equals blank, right? We're supposed to find what that is. So what is 18% of 145? Well, similar to last problem, we can break this problem down by seeing what it really represents. 18% of 145 is the same thing as 145 times 0.18. 0.18 is the same thing as 0.01 times 42. Right? Which means that 18% of 145 is really just 18 times 1% of 145. Now, for what we learned in the last problem, if we're trying to find 1% of a number, all you have to do is divide the number by 100. So in this case, 145 is our number, and to find 1%, we divide by 100. And that would give us 1.45. The easiest way to divide a number by 100 is start at the current decimal point, which is right here, and go over 2. So now the decimal point would be right here, which is 1.45. So now that we know that 1.45 is equal to 1%, all we have to do is 18 times 1.45. And that's pretty simple because 18 times 1.45 is 26.1. And that's your answer. Next, 72 is 30% of what number? Alright, so this is saying that 72 is 30% of x. And they want us to find what x is. So before we solve this problem, we need to see how we can break this statement down, right? 72 equals 30%. So what we want to do is we want to lower this 30% right here, right? We want to find what either 1%, 5%, or 10% is. The reason for that is if we have one of these three numbers, it's a very simple operation to find what 100% is. In this case, x equals 100%. Okay, so let's take this. 72 equals 30%. Let's say we want to break it down to 10. The way we would do that is we would divide 30 by 3, right? Because 30 divided by 3 is 10. That would give us 10%. But if we divide 30 by 3, we also have to divide 72 by 3, which means we get 72 by 3 equals 10%. 72 divided by 3 is 24, which means 24 equals 10%. From here, this problem is very straightforward. All we have to do is, if we know that 10% is 24, we also know that 100% is just 10 times 10%, which means x is 100%, right? So x is equal to 10 times the 10%. In this case, 10% is 24. So x is 10 times 24, which is 240, and that's your answer. All right, the next problem. If 40% of a number is 18 and 30% of another number is 24, what is the sum of the two numbers? All right, so what this problem is saying is if 40% of A equals 18 and 30% of B equals 24, what is A plus B? So this might seem like a pretty hard problem, but it's actually no different than the problem we did before this, because all we have to do is figure out what A is and figure out what B is and just add them up. That's the extra step, just adding. Okay, let's start off with 40% of A equals 18. So when we take this over here, let's just analyze the 18 equals 40%. If you remember from the last problem, when we have a percent like this, we always want to bring it down to either 1, 5, or 10. So let's see how we can do that. The easiest way to do this is by dividing the 40 by 4 to get 10%, which means we'd have to divide 18 by 4. 18 divided by 4 is 4.5, which means 4.5 equals 10%. And we know that A over here, right? Let's not forget that A is 100%. And we know that 100% equals 10 times 10%. So filling out our equation, A is equal to 10 times 10%, which in this case is 4.5. So A is 45. Now we repeat the same process with B because we know that A is 45. So let's do it. We know that 24 is equal to 30% of B. We want to reduce this 30% to either 1, 5, or 10. So what we can do in this case is, similar to the last problem, we can just divide this side by 3 to get 10% on this side, which means if we divide this side by 3, we also have to divide this side by 3. 24 divided by 3 is 8, which means 8 is equal to 10%. And we know that B, right? Let's not forget that B is 100%. So the equation to find this is 100% equals 10 times 10%. And we know that 100% is B, and the 10% is 8, which means B is just 10 times 8, so B is 80. So now that we know that A is 45 and B is 80, all we have to do is 45 plus 80, which is 125, and that's your answer.
That's it. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing. I take a lot of effort to make these videos, and I'd really appreciate it.